Hello and welcome to the Love and Compassion podcast with Giselle. We believe that love and compassion have the power to heal our lives and our world. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing content. Today, we're going to be talking about the power of intimacy and connection. And our guest today is Luyba Venable, and she's a highly trained sex and relationship coach, passionate about helping men discover what women truly crave for within intimate connections. Having led countless women only pleasure retreats, Lyuba has gained a vast understanding of women's needs who feel deeply fulfilled. And with this, she identified a calling that speaks to her, guiding men towards becoming the most impactful and authentic lovers they can be. Lyuba's Authentic Lovers for Men program empowers men to explore the depths of intimacy and the specific needs that women struggle to openly express. Known for her approachable style and real world insights, Lyuba practices everything she teaches, embodying the lessons she shares with her clients. Please join me in welcoming Lyuba. Hi,
Hi, Giselle.
how are you?
I'm so good. I just had a session with a young couple, like in their 20s, and I just turned 41, and I feel like I'm this like an older, wiser woman who's just like teaching them about how to be closer, how to have fun in their
Mm.
relationship. So my heart is full. I love
Mm.
doing what I do.
Oh, that is so amazing. And, like kudos to them for actually looking to explore that so that they can get that greater intimacy. So that's amazing. Where did you get started in
Yeah.
this work? Can you share it with
Um,
the audience?
Yeah, so I started when COVID started, so that's my starting
Oh,
point.
okay, okay. Nice.
And that was the time when I used to work in software industry. When I moved to United States, my first company was Google. So I was like
Really?
out there.
Oh, wow. Go on.
Yeah. And then I was taking this like a weekend training where we were like really feeling inside, looking inside. And there was this like a calling that I want to work with people like on intimacy, sexuality. I want to help people to connect. And that was just like, okay, I have to do it. And I started as COVID started. I
Yeah.
couldn't wait longer.
Oh, that's so funny. That's incredible. Um, Having been a coach for a little while, what do you think the biggest mistake is that women and men make around intimacy?
Oh, yeah. The biggest, it's like no one teaches us. That's the first thing to start, that
True.
in our
True.
families, for most of us, it's not modeled. The intimacy is not modeled, right?
Yeah.
And then schools don't teach us. And
Yeah.
so how are we supposed to know? So we enter relationships that we don't know how to create intimacy. I feel like I experienced my first intimacy like being close with another person when I was 30. So it just like I didn't have it as a little kid. And I just I remember I cried the whole weekend because it felt so good, and I was so sad that I haven't had it in my life, right? That I haven't experienced it earlier in my life, that I was missing it and craving it,
Yeah, it's
right?
so funny. Absolutely. I mean, I was thinking about my own family. In my own family, like sex was a no talk. Like it was like hushity hush. You don't mention that. You don't talk about pleasure. You certainly don't talk about intimacy. And I would say that I was taught it was supposed to be fairly mechanical. Like it was just like, something
Mm,
you did. And it was like there was definitely no talk about women's pleasure. There was definitely no talk about in particular. Maybe it was like considered acceptable for it to be a men's pleasure, but I don't know so much about women. So
mm.
that's a very good point that you've made. What did you learn in working with both women that really surprised you about how sex and intimacy is happens between the sexes?
it it's just like there are so many surprises, because the first one that no one teaches us about female sexuality. I feel like sexologists, historically they used to be men, like women came in later. right? And so,
It's so true.
and
Here's what I think the clitoris does. Yeah, that's so fair. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Totally
and
through.
so, and there is this like whole expected women, we are expected to show up sexually same as men, but we are so different. Like simply, most women don't have orgasm from penetration,
Yeah.
right? And I remember I am one of them. I don't like I need
Mm.
vibrator on my clitoris to like to have orgasm, and
Yeah.
and so I used to be. I felt something wrong with me because I thought like
Mm.
when you have penetrative sex, that's when man and woman have orgasm. But then like looking into anatomy, our clitoris is outside. We have some tissue inside, but most of it outside. So it's mostly like, oh, those women who have orgasm just from penetration. How does it happen? It's like
Yeah.
almost like right. So just normalizing like a lot of sins. Another sin for women, we are slower, so it just, I love
Mm.
this analogy. Woman is like water and man is fire. So man, like he feels attraction, he turned on, he's hard, he ready to go. And for women, it takes us like I say 40 minutes, at least 40 minutes foreplay. It takes us time to warm up,
Yeah.
but then we last longer. How about that?
Yeah. Yeah, which is great. Yeah. And I would say men and women show up differently, right? Like what women want or the kind of level of intimacy women want may look different in terms of men, like how they show up in terms of when they want to initiate intimacy. What have you found?
Yeah, yeah. Like the usually it's so fascinating because men, like a typical man who is seeking coaching, they want to be the best lover. So they
Hmm.
really want to please their partner. And
Hmm.
so and they think that like they need to work, they need to last longer, or like if erection is an issue, like to work on erection. So they focus on their penis. But then it's fascinating because that's not what women want. So, so
Yes.
women, we
Yeah.
we we want that emotional presence, that emotional availability to be able to share, and that he holds you,
Yeah.
and that he's just like present, right? And so this is what like they come to work on their penis, and we end up working on like so many other scenes, which like penis is icing on the cake.
Yeah.
But
This is
and
so
that's like
funny. Yeah. Go
it
ahead.
is, yeah. And then like women, like usually women comes for coaching because they have low libido, so they don't feel like
Mhm.
having sex. And then we are looking, are they having sex that they really will be like satisfying? Because a lot of times they don't. A lot of times, like you said, it's mechanical. It's just
Mhm.
like genitals rubbing, have orgasm, and then it's just like no wonder they don't feel like having sex. And then like low libido, what if woman had a satisfying sex? Then how about that you we create that experience for her, and then she's like all hungry, she wants more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It reminded me of like what you were talking about before about the whole like the women want to be romanced versus the men just, they're seeking about like the whole penetration piece of it. I was reminded of so there's this comedian Taylor Tomlinson that was talking about how her friends had introduced her to female porn like on radio,
Mm.
and what
Mm.
it was basically this guy like doing things like fixing a tire and talking to her or like emotionally supporting her. So it's 20 minutes of the guy telling like helping her calm down and reassuring her that everything was going to be okay. And I'm like, that's hilarious. 'Cause it's so funny how we show up in these intimate moments. And it's not just about sex, it's about intimacy. It's about coming together. It's about like the unification or unity, right? And I
Yeah,
think men
and
crave that too, right? Like they crave that
of
connection, but how
course,
it shows up is different.
yeah, it's like all humans, we crave intimacy, and by intimacy I don't mean sex. We crave that closeness, we want to be close. And
Yeah.
then like sex can be added to it, and it's beautiful for some people. For there are people that they don't want intimacy and sex together. So we're all different. That's what the important thing I learned. One size doesn't fit all. That like we're all
Mm,
very
yeah,
different.
for sure.
So like let's say for me, intimacy and sex, they come so good together, right? And it's just like many
Mm,
women are like that. And there are people, men and women, who separate them. So they seek some
Mm.
like like having sex with a stranger, or like some newness, and intimacy is kind of
Ah,
gets in
yeah,
the
yeah.
way.
Mm.
But that's totally fine. We don't choose
Oh,
this. Like
yeah.
these desires, they formed in us as we are little kids, and then like later we want to experience it sexually. So it's just, yeah, it's beautiful, psychology of sex, psychology of
Mm.
love making. That's what I'm
Yeah.
so fascinated about, because like again, like no one teaches us, right? But just understanding what psychologically turns person on. It's not like position, how many people think, or like some sensation necessarily. It's like the psychology, what they want to feel.
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
and the,
Yeah.
and there is this
Okay.
like funny example I wanted to share, like how you talked like different, right? Like men and women different.
Yeah.
That like men and women, they have great sex. They both loved it. It was amazing experience. And so woman is telling like how we have this like the moments that are highlights for us, right? And so
Yeah.
woman is talking about her highlights, and she would say something like, oh my god, he looked in my eyes and like I felt electricity in my body. Then we were making out for hours. Or like
Mm.
he held my hand and it just like I felt his desire, right? And so the same experience, like same sex, same man is talking, man would say something like, oh my god, she got on top of me and she was riding me and her hair was like all flying, and then she was so hungry and she just went
Mm.
down on me. And it just like they both had, no one is lying, they both had all of those
Yeah.
moments and they all enjoyed. But the highlights for women and for men a lot of times different.
Yeah. Yeah. For
And
sure.
that's
And
fascinating.
and it is very fascinating. And there's an aspect of me that wonders whether some of that is a bit of socialization for men. And the reason why I mention that is because, one of the things I've been really pondering is the issue of that, men, it seems in our society, and I could totally be wrong, but it seems like in our society, we are taught that the primary acceptable emotion for men is anger, and the primary way to achieve closeness is sex. So it doesn't
Mm,
seem to me that boys are really nurtured, like they're not really reinforced to seek nurturance without that climax and
mhm,
sex, that intimacy without it leading to something else. And now this is maybe the way I was socialized, but it is really, it seems to me that just in terms of like my family units and the things that I see from the people that I've surrounded, there's that disconnect in between, like that usually that some sort of level of touch leads to or has to lead to. And I think there's sometimes that expectation of women, and this is why some women are like, well, I don't feel like it, because you assume that touch is automatically going to lead to to having something, when sometimes touch is just a hug or comfort. And so I have seen, at least in my environment, this disconnect of the socialization of men for, that that's sex is for intimacy, and that's the way we get closeness, and
mhm.
not necessarily like just the intimacy itself, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And that's what like the intimacy is like the aspect that a lot of times people just, like I said earlier, like never learned how to do it and like
Yeah.
never experience. And
Yeah.
so like when I have clients in my office, and so my coaching is experiential, that if it's a couple, like they do experience with each other, but if
Yeah.
individual is coming, they do like, they experience it like I do it with them. So we would just like look in the eyes and connect, and then just like gently touching. Like I would like play music and touch, like face, just I'm not turning them on, just like this honoring touch that like,
Yeah.
wow, like this human being, like I'm so honored to touch you. And just like including hair and just touching like for the sake of touching, right? And a
Yeah.
lot of times people start crying, that there
Mm.
is that like men and women that like,
Yeah.
wow, like I never been touched like that,
Yeah.
because somehow touch connected to sex, right? That like, okay, we are about to have sex, like let's touch to warm up. So it's like a foreplay tool, which is great, it works,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. For
not
sure.
only for that, right?
Yeah.
Just like touching for the sake of touching. And something I learned, and we have been doing it with my husband, and I highly recommend for people to
Yeah.
do it, that to have 15 minutes each. So I would just lay down, and we have a timer that like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that we know. Uh, and just like he will touch me from head to toe, and we discuss boundaries, that like even we married for 8 years,
Yeah.
sometimes I don't feel like I don't want my genitals to be touched or my breasts to be touched. I want it to be like pure non-sexual. And so
Yeah.
just like receiving that touch, and then I flip and he touches like my back, like all from head to toe. And there
Mm.
is something, it's like I had a meal. I just like this
Ah,
energetical meal, and we felt so closer because this is my honey, this is my close person
yeah.
who just like nourished me and not warming me up for sex, right? So we just after that
Yeah.
we continue with our day.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. I love what you said because it also builds different levels of intimacy, right? Like it's not just about like because there's also a timing aspect of it. People think they just got to get to the punchline and move on, right? Like that
Mm,
sometimes like in this kind of world that we're so hurried, we just kind of want to get there. Whereas what you're talking about is like time separated to spend together, which I think is really important. The other thing I think that you mentioned, which is critical, is just because you're married doesn't mean you don't have boundaries. Just because or
exactly.
that you don't have like you can't voice your desires, and I think that has been an issue in terms of like domestic violence and issues of like assault within marriages because people are like, well, you're married. No, you have your boundaries. You still, it's your body still, right? And so to be able to communicate
Yeah.
with your partner in a very fair way, I think is most appropriate. So that's
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Totally, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. And going back to the issue of time too, doesn't seem like in general we make time. One of the things that my husband and I talk about is like he loves to spend time together, but he doesn't like it to be, you know what I'm saying? Like he doesn't want us to be like every Friday we're going out on date night, right? Whereas I'm like, I've sometimes like I have so many things that I'm juggling. Like for me, it's like, oh, it would be great if we could separate the times because then sometimes like a week will go by and then we don't get to spend that time together. And I'm like, well, we didn't spend that time together. I mean, we're both lucky that we both work from home. So we're able to carve those
Mm,
times when we'll have breakfast together or we'll have lunch together. Right. And so I'm able to do that. But the times when I feel like I'm craving a little bit more closeness. For me, having that time is like, oh, a special thing I'm looking forward to. Whereas he
mhm.
prefers the most spontaneous things. Do you find that time is a factor in terms of when people are considering the amount of closeness or intimacy that they spend as a couple?
Yeah, yeah. This time is one factor. Like there are several factors, and I
Oh,
want
okay.
to mention others
Yeah, yeah,
later. But
perfect.
time, you're right this time because like we are all busy, and then if you have children or
Yeah,
anyone you take care of, right? It
yeah,
all adds up, and then we become like these like partners, roommates in a way. But there is no
yeah,
time for sex or
yeah.
any quality time,
Yeah.
right? Like
My
any
mother-in-law
just
used to call it ships passing in the night. I'm like,
exactly, yeah. It's
okay.
just like you're passing by, you don't meet each other,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that's what you want to meet each other. And my first, I met this like my mentor. When I met her, she'd been 20 years with her husband, and when I
Oh,
visited them, they're like they're all over each other. They're like touching each
mm,
other, like they just met. And I'm like,
yeah.
wait a second. Like, I'm like 3 years in my marriage and we don't do that, you know? And I was just like so curious. And she
Yeah.
said this, it just like, it got in me like set in stone. It just was so like, just struck me. She said, we schedule our dates. We have scheduled dates. And I swear to God, when I started doing that, it's a game changer. And we will talk in a moment about like how your husband doesn't like to do that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right? But something we do, we have this like 6 hour date every week. And like
Mm,
6 hours, it's a lot of time, right?
it
And
is, yeah.
and I feel like that's our saver because like life gets so busy. And at first we tried to schedule over it. It's like, oh, it's 6 hours, like let's spend the first hour talking about finances, let's do this like No, 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 no. So it's a golden rule. Nothing can be nothing overridden. Like there is nothing more important. It's our 6 hours. And then when we have
Mm.
these 6 hours, like I feel the spaciousness, right? So I feel like my partner is fully present. We start with a check-in, and we have this vulnerable check-in where sometimes like I would talk about like what is hard for me and just like maybe cry about something, and he's holding me and he does the same. And I feel like the moment we do that, I'm just like, for me, and again, we're all different, but for me, that vulnerability just like it's kind of like it turns me on in a way, like I feel
Mm.
so open. And
Yeah.
then we might go somewhere for a walk, we might go have like lunch together or whatever,
Yeah.
or sometimes we just spend in bed like all the rest of 5 hours. And so that's our time, and we have it every week, and like nothing gets in the way. Yeah,
Wow. Yeah. Go
right.
ahead. Oh, no, no, go ahead.
But then, so I'm thinking that for your partner, that there can be something that like spontaneity is important, like being
Yeah.
spontaneous, right? And it
Yes.
could be even like core desire, like that can be something that is just like hot for him, something that like if it's planned, it kills the moment, right?
Mm.
So I'm thinking like how to get creative here. I wonder what if like maybe if you scheduled it for yourself and then like came at him
Surprise him.
spontaneous. Yes. That
Accost him when he's going down the stairs. Actually, that sounds like pretty good. That makes, yeah, that sounds pretty good. Yeah. Yeah, for
right, to
sure.
just like to get creative, to play with it.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's what I talk with my clients a lot, that when we meet, we find this like, oh, this is our favorite position, this is the way like we have orgasm. And then when we do it for years, it becomes kind of like stale and we used to it. We want to bring that creativity, to understand the core desire of your person, and then just like keep exploring, like, oh, what if I try this, what if I try that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just dance with it, right?
Yeah. I love that. I was just thinking as you were talking before, I was thinking about how I'm guilty of that. So when we are spending time together, I will immediately go into mom mode in the beginning. Like, so you were talking about 6 hours. You were right. Like the first 5 minutes, I'll be like, okay, what do we have to do? And what do we have to do for the kids? Da, 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 da. And he's like,
Mm.
so and I'm like, oh, so I just noticed as you were talking, I'm like, oh, that's me. I do that. I immediately go into like, okay, what do we have to? We have this time together. What do we have to sort out? And then I will say that I do check myself, but I feel the need at times just to talk about it first and just to kind of almost get it out of the way. So I'm like, so I think it's a
Yeah,
pretty cool rule to say this is not the time for that. Like this is not the time.
yeah,
It's this is our protected time, and that's the
yeah,
time to do that. So I do like
yeah.
that a lot.
Yeah, and there is difference. Like one thing is like you're in a planning mode and you're planning like
Yeah.
that you want to put out, but then like maybe something you struggle in, right? Like maybe something like you're not connecting with your kid, or like something your kid said and it really hurt you, or you feel like you're
Mm.
not present enough, right? So
Yeah.
those things like there is something powerful about like sharing them or sharing your struggles
Yeah.
and like getting vulnerable, right? Like really opening up. We just a deeper place opens up when we connect with
Yeah.
our partners.
And we definitely do that. Like I talk to my husband a lot about like things that trigger me, things like old history and stuff. And like we
Mhm.
talk about like emptying our buckets that way. I will say that like I don't know if vulnerability is as reinforced in men. Like I think my husband is I feel now able to talk to me in a very vulnerable way, but it wasn't always the case. I think that men have been not all men, but some men have been conditioned to be like the stoic, like I have to be not cry, be the one that holds my family together, like that kind of. So vulnerability can sometimes feel a little bit like weakness or scary. What do you tell the men that
Yeah.
you work with around how to open themselves up to be more vulnerable so that they don't feel like it's a weakness, but rather a step towards coming closer?
Yeah. And you are spot on, Giselle. You're so spot on because men are not taught that like you're totally right, that it is, they see it as a weakness, and a lot of times they just don't know how to do it. I'm like, okay, could
Yeah.
you share something vulnerable? And they talk about like yesterday at lunch, something that doesn't matter, right? And so
Somebody gave
it
me a
just like,
tuna sandwich instead of giving me a turkey sandwich, and I was very upset. Yeah.
yeah. And so that just, it's hard, and it is hard to get vulnerable, right? And so
Yeah.
what works really well, that when I interact with men, I model it by example. So
Mm.
I will get vulnerable, and I share. I notice whenever I get vulnerable, the humans, they open up towards it. For some
Mm.
humans, it take longer, right? There might be resistance. For some, it's like works right away. But there is something about like one person, it's like one opens and then the rest, it just like cracks the rest. And then
Yeah,
everyone
yeah, yeah,
opens, right?
yeah,
So just like when, but real vulnerability, right? Like I would
yeah,
like share something like real, and people feel that energy of like how
yeah,
I put myself like out there, right?
yeah.
And so they want to respond with the same. They just like they jump in. And the important thing I say, when people practice, like when they're not used to it, you want to share it with someone who can hold you. You're not just
Mm.
like sharing it with a person. Like I remember I shared something vulnerable with my dad, and he started scolding me. He's like, you should not have done it.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not, you don't want to get vulnerable with.
No, the last thing you want to do is when you put yourself out there, somebody tell you like you're doing that wrong. But there is a real
Yeah.
generational thing, right? Like when I think about even think about my father-in-law when he was alive, like I remember my husband mentioning that he didn't really hug them until he was 13. Like it was something that his wife, his mother, like my mother-in-law would encourage him to do. But as he got
Yeah.
older in life, he totally craved those hugs. He was a hugger. He was a nonstop
Oh.
hugger because he, like his parents, like he died and he had all this trauma. And so you kind of build all these walls and then, but it's love has a way of melting that, right? It has a way of
Mm,
when you're reaching out for that touch and when you're able to move that forward of really opening up that space for people. But there's definitely a
yeah.
generational thing when it comes to
Yeah.
intimacy, you know?
There is, yeah, that like I wasn't touched by my parents much. Like we didn't have hugs, and so that's like I crave it. I remember craving it. And then when I learned all of this, right, like the importance of touch, and that like as of today, like I do touch, like I touch with my clients, like with their
Yeah.
permission. It's like their
Yeah, of
choice,
course.
right? But we
Yeah.
do this like touch, and then with my friends, like I have friends, we are not sexual, and we just like we
Yeah.
hold hands as we are talking, you know, and then we will do this exercise like touching each other, and it's like non-sexual touch. It's so nourishing.
Well,
And I'm thinking, what if the world was more open to touch?
yeah.
Because
But I
like we
think if I
crave
knew
it.
you, I think we'd be great friends because I'm such a touchy person. I think that's my love
Oh,
language. It's
that's your
so
love
true. I
language.
think that we would totally be like people that would be like hugging each other and touching if I was your friend. Because I'm like, I'm so that way. And it's so funny how like my kids and my husband have like a different love language. Mine
Mm,
came out first in terms of like mine's physical touch. Like I gotta
mm,
touch them. Like right, and so and since they're teenagers now, they're kind of like, can you give me some space?
mm.
And I used to have a dog, and my kids used to call it my emotional support dog because if nobody wanted to give me a hug, I would hug the dog and make him uncomfortable. Unfortunately, my beloved dog has since passed, but yeah, it was like I crave that physical touch. And I would tell my kids, I'm like, it says research says that, you have to hug for like 10 seconds for this hug to impact you. Whereas like my
Yeah.
husband's love language is more like acts of service. Like he will do things, so many different things for his family. Like he's always like he's kind of our rock, right? And my kids are different. Like when we all did it, we all kind of ended up with something different. And it's so funny how people
Mm,
communicate their needs. Definitely
yeah.
physical touch is one of mine for sure.
Oh, I love it. And but as well, like something that we miss a lot of times with love languages, that there is giving and receiving love
Yeah.
language, right? So maybe
Yes.
for you, both giving and receiving is touch. And it can be like, so when you're partners, right? Like with your kids, with your partner,
Mm.
like again, like you getting vulnerable, I imagine, and like sharing, like, this is my love language. I crave it. I really
Mm,
want, like, I would love a hug. That would make my day if you just hug
yeah.
me in the moment and leave it at that, right? Like it doesn't mean they have to do it. They're a choice.
Yes.
Everyone is a choice, right? But
Agreed.
just
Agreed.
but just putting it out there, right? That like
Hmm.
asking for what you want and being ready to hear no.
Yeah. I hear no a lot. Sometimes they go like, okay. Right.
Oh,
But yeah, but I'm open. That's why they're like, Mom, you should
yeah.
get another dog. I'm like,
Yeah. Oh. And with pets, that's what, like, a lot of times when people don't have a sexual partner, they don't get touch, right? In our society,
yeah.
where else do you get
Yeah.
touch? You can go
Yeah.
for massage, but like not everyone likes massages. It gets pricey, right? So
Yeah.
like where do you get touch? People get pets. And so this is exactly what you're saying, that like
Mhm.
because pet, like we still like we have this warm being that we can touch, but then
Yes.
we don't get, they're not touching us the way how human can touch us, right? So
Yeah.
like that part is still missing.
Yeah. No, that's
Yeah,
totally true. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's
And then
very
and then
fair.
another
Yeah.
thing
Go ahead.
about the hugs with, I remember coming across this research that when we don't have any hugs, it's easy to get depressed and feel moody.
Yeah.
And that's just like, it's proven that even like grown-ups, like babies can develop mental illness if they're not touched enough.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
grown-ups, we learn to survive, like we're okay, but we kind of like we're getting depressed. And then having like 3 or 4 hugs, that's what, that we are okay. That's like fine. So if we get 3, 4 hugs per day, we are okay. And then having something like 10 hugs makes us thrive.
Yeah. I tell my kids that statistic, and I'm like, gotta do 10 flourishing. They're like, yeah, I'm
Yes.
not buying a mom. But I love that. I did tell them that. I was like, Lyuba said 10 hugs is the
Yeah, it's
acceptable for
prescribed
you
for
to be
you to.
prescribed. It's for you to be thriving. I'm doing you a favor. Yeah,
Yeah.
like talking about physical touch, like during COVID, it really showed us how much we craved contact, how much being in connection with people. Right. And I feel like we're going through this whole thing about people feel so disconnected. They feel so distant, right? They're so pitted against one another for all these things. And I just think like that we really need more connection, more touch, more intimacy, and understanding how to gain that intimacy and how to vocalize that intimacy. Because I think it can be difficult for some women to express what they need, right? And why do you think that is?
Yeah, that what you're talking, how in the world we feel distance, something that breaks my heart, that I
Mm.
see distance between partners. So
Yeah.
that people who are the closest, right?
Yeah.
You're supposed to have this person to be your closest, but they end up over time, instead of growing closer and deepening, right? Kind of
Mm.
like more and more separating and like living together, having kids, having house, and feeling that distance, that, right? And so I
Yeah.
experienced it a lot, that like a couple would come that like, oh, like we don't have sex. We are in a sexless marriage. We want to have sex. But then like I have so many tools for teaching sex, but like I see this wall between them. Like there is no tool will apply until we remove the wall. Because
Yeah.
like you can have sex with a wall between you.
No, no. And I think that was one of the things that my husband and I talked about. And I think that I remember him saying, like, we were early on, and he said, like, the relationship has to be important. We have to prioritize seeing ourselves beyond just parents. And that really
Mm.
stuck with me because I hadn't kind of heard that before. I kind of saw my parents as people that their priority in terms of like, oh, you have to do all of these tasks and all these things, and relationship was just there. So I didn't see because I didn't see a lot of intimacy and connection and all of that. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
challenging for me in the beginning to really be vulnerable and really
Hmm.
be to allow myself to have that vulnerability within the relationship. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, and I think like I agree with that, that like to nourish relationship, right? Like to
yeah,
that like I love this analogy that when you start playing tennis, Like you buy all of these like equipment, you go regularly practice, right? And
Yeah.
then when you get into relationship, you kind of like put it on the side. Like
Yeah. You're like, my
treat
tennis
it.
racket's over there gaining like dust. Or they use it as
Yeah,
something else, like you put your clothes on the piano or something. Yeah, totally
yeah,
true.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like keep exercising it, right? So that's one thing. And I
Wow.
think there is something like very important, and that like again, like no one tells us about this. That I love this, like the concept Emily Nagoski explains it. So there is a book, Come As You Are. This book is about female sexuality.
Oh,
And as
okay.
well, she mentioned there is when we have like, let's say we are two people, we get together. At first, it's flowing, right? Like each other, it's all
Yeah.
great.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then we
yeah.
step on each other's toes. Like inevitably, we will hurt each other. The closer we are, like
Mm.
the more hurtful whatever our partner is doing, right? Like
The more
so,
vulnerable we feel. Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we hurt each other and we swallow it. And so Emily describes it, it's like a hedgehog. Let's say my partner did
Mm.
something and I felt an ouch.
Mm.
And so when I felt that ouch and I didn't clear it, I put a hedgehog. And so another hedgehog. And there are like small hedgehogs, like maybe he didn't do dishes or like something. And there are big hedgehogs, like maybe I felt betrayed or he didn't show up for me or right, like so, and we put that pile of hedgehogs between us, and then
Mm.
it's like either it's a wall or it's a hedgehogs, right? Like we have that, so that's how we create the distance. And so how to not create them, to clear them, that like to commit to, it's almost like brushing teeth. Every time I feel a little ouch, I would be like, hey honey, I have a hedgehog, like are you
Hmm.
open to
Yeah.
hear? And
I
sometimes
love
he
that.
was maybe like, oh no, let's do later, I'm like focused on something. But when he is open, right, and then I will share it in I feel perspective, not that like how dare you, you just like, right, like not blaming, but like something happened and I felt this, like you
Mm.
left dishes and I felt like I saw it and I felt like, oh, I'm not important, like that, I'm not
Yeah.
important for you, you know how I love clean kitchen, right? And so, and just like, I'm not saying it to change my partner, it's important that I don't try to manipulate, like I'm just saying it to remove that hedgehog, that I don't hold it against my partner. And this
Mm.
has been such a amazing tool, that
Hmm.
we make sure we don't have any hedgehogs. And
Yeah.
when there is a hedgehog, we just sit down. If it's a big one, like the small one, we kind of like do it quickly, but then we sit down. And as I share it,
Mm.
for someone who's receiving, it's important for them to like have empathy, like not go
Yeah.
into this, like because a lot of times, especially men, they're like, okay, we'll fix it, I will do the dishes starting tomorrow, I will do all the dishes. And it's not about that. It's
Mm.
about like, oh honey, I get it, yeah,
Mm.
you really like, you looked almost like repeating in your own words, right? Like
Mm.
you came into the kitchen and you're like, what the heck, like
Yeah.
oh like you felt like something dropped, right? To just like really having empathy. And after empathy, sharing like, oh, I was so sleepy and like I didn't feel like doing dishes.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just like the most important tool for relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can think about early in my relationship. I've been with my husband for a long time. My daughter is now teen. And we were, I think, together 2, 3 years even before that. And I remember like early in the relationship, I didn't realize how I didn't love myself and value myself enough. I didn't think I was worthy.
Mm,
And so I kind of molded myself and had all these
mm,
expectations of what my partner should be. And I think I
mhm,
realized that once I stopped needing him to be the stuff that I needed for myself, that I could give myself. And I really
mhm,
did see a shift in our relationship in terms of like I no longer expected him to meet all those needs, all these needs that I had that he didn't even know I had. That because I never
mm.
vocalized, I just expected him to psychically know. It's funny how we do that, right? Like if you loved me and you knew me, you should know what I and now I don't
Yeah.
make those assumptions of like, oh, he must know what I need. And I will say, I'll try to have conversations. I'm not always successful. Sometimes I'm just triggered and I'm like, okay, you need to give me a moment. But when I'm there, we can talk about like, look, I know it wasn't your intention to do that, but this is the impact of the whatever that happened, I know that you would never mean to hurt me because that's just because I know you
Mm.
love me. This is the impact, or this is why I was triggered. Sometimes I can't stop myself from being triggered. I'll just react. Like I'll just have a trigger and then I'll be
Oh,
like, okay, no.
but that's how trigger works. Yes,
Yeah, exactly. And then
it's
I'm like,
not
oh,
you, it's
okay.
everyone.
Yeah, it's like, but then I know when I'm triggered, it's something about me. Like
Yeah.
there's something that needs to heal within me, and so I have seen that shift. But I will say that I like from what I had seen going back to the socialization of some men, and I was thinking more heterosexual men, there hasn't really been that the taught about how to hold space for those difficult conversations. Because sometimes what I had
Mm.
found with my partner, like early on, was a defensiveness. The shame and guilt would come up, and they didn't know how to manage it because they weren't taught. They weren't
Mm.
taught to be okay with difficult feelings and be okay with everything that comes up. They were just told to suppress and just only show anger. And so
Mhm.
it's interesting to see how we have sort of evolved, you know, managing our own mistakes and making mistakes and coming together to be able to communicate in that way. But it takes
Yeah.
work. Like people think, you know, I was reflecting. You know, when I got married, I was like 27. To
Hmm.
assume I'm going to make a decision when I was 27 that's going to hold the same for like, it doesn't like the whole
For your whole
concept of
life?
marriage for your whole life. I'm like, well, you can't assume you're always going to feel the same way. And the good thing is that my husband and I have evolved and continue to desire to evolve. But it's interesting how we make a decision when we're 27 and we're like, yeah, okay, this is how I'm always going to feel. But if anything, life is constantly changing, right? You're always
Yes.
in a state of flux. So you don't know if how you're going to feel when you're in your 50s, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of
Yeah.
paradoxical. Yeah.
And then the fairy tales, like we learn how like when you meet that
Oh
perfect
my
person,
God.
they
Yeah.
will know, they will feel everything, they will know
Yeah. Yeah.
everything. And it's just
Yeah.
like, and the truth is that person doesn't exist. And
Yeah.
like, but we can tell them, right?
Yeah.
When I tell what I desire, and then my partner is so happy to do it, then he becomes that prince who does
Yeah.
all the
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
But I have
Yeah.
to tell him because he doesn't know
Yeah. Yeah,
otherwise.
that is so true. And it's so funny because you mentioned fairy tales. If you actually look at those fairy tales, historically, I would say not so much now. I think Disney has evolved to some level. But historically, the end game was marriage. It wasn't a
Exactly, yes.
successful relationship 50 years down the road. It was always just get the ring on your finger. They never showed Cinderella being in the castle, being all upset if the prince forgot her birthday or whatever. They never showed any of that. It was always end game was marriage. Now I'm glad
Yeah.
that it's changed, but it's interesting in
Yes.
my generation, the end game was that. It
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily
Yeah.
even having a successful marriage long term. It wasn't even having a successful intimate relationship. It was you find this person, marry this person at the end.
And
So
and and then what do you do then, right? And
yeah,
then like
exactly. Nobody told you. Yeah.
when things are not working, we feel like, oh, something wrong with me. We feel shame about it, and with shame we get quiet and we kind of like chug along, right? But then like there are so much. There are like all of these tools, approaches. That's what I love what I do, because all of these things, like not only I get to share with people, I can apply into my life and it
Yeah.
works.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
For
that's
sure.
that's how you make it work. And another thing I wanted to say, like men holding space for women. So what you mentioned
Yeah. Yeah.
earlier,
Yeah.
that's something I feel like yes, that's important, and it needs to be practiced because it's
Yeah.
easier said than it is done, right? And so something that like I love, I just had this like coaching call with my men members, and I practiced with them. I said I have hedgehog for all of you, so I sent feedback form and no one filled it out, and I shared how I felt, right? So I said that
Yeah.
like I felt so like I don't matter, and that that I'm too much, and like all my feelings, like I shared what I had,
Yeah.
right? And it was fascinating to see how they immediately jumped into like, okay, I will fill it up right now. I will like I will like kind of explain and why they didn't do it. And I'm like, whoa, 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 slow down, empathy. Give me empathy.
Yeah.
And then we practiced like, okay, like really feel what I feel. And that's how you hold space, right? You just
Yeah.
you try to feel, you try to step into other
Yeah.
person's shoes and
Yeah.
feel what they are feeling, right? And like sometimes maybe help them to like, oh, perhaps you feel this, like maybe you felt really sad, right? And then they will say like, yeah, 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 or maybe no, I didn't feel sad, right? So we drop into feelings and we really feel instead of like solving it or apologizing or explaining yourself
Yeah.
right away.
And it's so funny as you were mentioning that, I immediately went to the thought of like, they're trying to fix it so that you could stop emoting. Like, do you know what I'm saying?
That's
Like they're
good.
moving for, like they're like, I got to solve this problem right now, because what I have found is that some men's discomfort with those emotions, because they can't hold space for them, because that's been conditioned out, because they can't hold space for their own difficult feelings. The immediate response is, got to fix this so she's fine. Got to respond and give her a reason so she's fine. And so it's that need to, I immediately need to give something or do something. Or the other end of that extreme is silence. Some people just can't
Mm,
manage it. So then what they do is they're like, they do the freeze response. So they're
yeah,
like
yeah.
a turtle it, or they'll do that freeze response that animals do, which is like, can't manage this difficult feeling. Is it going to go away if I don't move? So
Mm,
it's that being able to be
yeah.
in that difficult moment. And I love how you're giving them an opportunity to say, no, slow down,
Yeah,
hold this
to
space
actually
with me.
practice it.
Hold this space with me, manage your difficult emotions so that you can understand how to hold space. That is so huge in today's society. We have no idea how to hold that kind of space for
Mhm.
difficult dialogue. And that's the
Yeah,
thing. If
yeah.
what is marriage, if anything, that you have to have difficult dialogue, right? You have to have difficult conversations. You may not agree on how you're managing the kids. You might not agree on whatever. But so being like on your bills, being able to hold those conversations and have difficult conversations in a way that doesn't shame or guilt the other person, but still honors your truth, I think is really,
Mm.
really key. It's really important.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. It is. And that's what like that's what we need for connection. That
Yeah.
to sit in those like when I have hard feelings, don't fix me because then I think
Yeah.
something wrong with me, right?
Yeah.
Be in those feelings with me, hold me. And that's what requires the practice. And
Yeah.
then when they do it, right? Like when my partner is doing it today, as of today, this is like, oh my God, like this is so amazing. This is wonderful. This is tremendous, right? Like that's how we have like satisfied this like amazing relationship. And I heard how they say that when I'm in pain and emotional pain, and to have another person who is willing to share that pain with me, to just sit in that pain, that's healing. Just just that is healing. Just being there listening, don't have
Yeah.
to fix, don't have to come up with emotion solutions. Just
Yeah.
be and feel and share and hold. Yes.
Mhm.
And sometimes silence, maybe be in silence. That can be hard too. And that can be beautiful to just be quiet with each other and just like
Yeah.
sit
Yeah.
in that.
Yeah. I think it depends how you hold the silence. Again, it's
Yeah,
like you can
yeah,
sit
yeah,
with somebody in
yeah.
silence with love, with non-judgment, with not, but in the, or you could do the freeze response, which is like
Yes.
there. And it's like, okay, I don't know what to do. I'm just frozen solid and expecting, like, I don't know how to manage. Because like, I think that can make a person feel not heard, like, and not witnessed, right? Because a person's
Yeah.
like, how long do I have to sit here before I can move on?
And freeze
Uh,
out. Yeah,
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 exactly. Yeah. Oh, it's so funny. Yeah.
yeah.
It's very interesting. What have you found that the men that you work with say they need in terms of like intimacy and relationships? And was it anything surprising?
Yeah, so the touch, a lot of times the touch comes up.
Mhm.
that like men really, really crave, really need touch. There is another scene that like being acknowledged, being appreciated. A lot of times, like men, they have this like they want to please you, they want to be this like great lover, they want to do things and they don't feel appreciated.
Mm.
And that's like appreciation, that's something that it's like glue in relationship, just like
Yeah.
sharing meaningful appreciations, not like, oh, you're a great partner, you're a great man, not that, just like, oh my god, that's like when you put that like painting on the wall, I just felt like a superhero entered my house. It felt so great, right? So just
Yeah.
like really sharing those feelings, right? Like the happy feelings. Then man, just like there is something like this on the sexual aspect, that
Mhm.
penis, like touching their genitals, like touching their
Mhm.
penis in a non-sexual environment. It's just like I was shocked when I realized that.
Yeah. So what
Because
does that mean?
so let me tell you, just I was
Oh,
I was
okay.
surprised myself.
Good to
Because
know.
like for
All right.
women, so that's again like for women, if someone comes to me and touch my genitals, I will be like, whoa, 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 like you
Yeah,
need you
like
need
a
to
boob
warm me
grabber.
up, like
Yeah, yeah.
warm me up for 40 minutes, and then I feel like, okay, now I'm open, now my pussy is on fire, right?
Yeah.
For man, there is something so connecting and so nourishing, that like let's say we are watching TV and I just hold his penis, and we know that I'm not inviting him to have sex. It's something so nourishing. And again, check with your man, there are
Yeah,
exceptions,
yeah, yeah.
right?
No,
It's
that's
not like,
really interesting. Yeah.
but this is like when with my partner, when we talked about it, I'm like,
Yeah.
don't hold my genitals, I don't like that if we're not sexual. But for him, I just hold, like we are sitting there, I just hold gently and he's soft, like most likely
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
so, or maybe he gets hard, so
Yeah,
what,
yeah, yeah.
I'm just holding,
Yeah.
where it's
Yeah.
non-sexual moment. But he
Yeah.
feels, this like the sense of like he's seen, he's like that connection, there is something just like bringing extra like that non-sexual touch to the penis.
Yeah.
How amazing is that? No one ever told me until I figured it out.
Yeah. And I think what you're pointing out to is very important, which is that communication with your partner about what feels good. With your partner about how we can help each other get there in that intimacy and how it can show up. Like for your partner, it may be that touching that genital. For other partners, it may be differently, right? It really, there's no right or wrong. It's about how we can attain that same goal that which we all want, which is like closeness and intimacy and sex and like that kind of like excitement in the relationship, right?
Yeah,
Which
yeah,
I
and
think
that's
it's
like
like
when
the
we
communication is key.
communication is lubrication. That's like that's that's where it
That
starts.
one before. I can use it in any other context other than this
Oh my,
conversation.
but no, but it's just like it's even lubrication for relationship. It's like
It's
not
true.
just
Yeah.
sex. It's good
Uh,
for sex, yes, and
yes,
in
of
general, it
course.
just like it kind of like lubricates
Yeah. Oh my
everything.
God, that's
That
hilarious.
like when we have those communication moments, right? Like when we can
Yeah.
openly talk,
Yeah.
then I can ask something that is edgy, something that
Yeah.
like for me, asking my partner to massage my shoulders, like
Mm.
I
Hmm.
was afraid, like, and I wanted every evening. And I was afraid that, like, oh, that's too much, or it will be like a burden for him. And the moment I asked, he was like, oh my God, I never thought about it. Oh, it's so good to know. Like, now I
Yeah.
get my
Yeah.
shoulders massaged all the time. But before I asked,
Nice.
that wasn't happening,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. Then I think it goes back to the whole aspect of vulnerability and if as a child you didn't feel like you get your needs met by your parents, let's say for example, or the adults in your life, maybe it might feel a little bit scary and vulnerable to really ask for what you need because I think sometimes you might feel afraid of being disappointed. I'm not sure kind of like the kind of conversations that the school systems have. I know conversations I had with my um, children to the extent that they're open and willing to, like both my husband and I are fairly open about things. To the extent
Mm.
I would say I'm more closed off than he is. His mom is a nurse or was a nurse. And so she was very
Hmm.
open with them about things because she didn't want them to experience a lot of shame happen. So
Yeah.
he's much more open to talking about different things. And I certainly was not. I kind of had to get comfortable opening about things. We do kind of do a disservice to each other by not engaging in that open dialogue about
Yeah.
pleasure, women's pleasure in particular, and about that
Hmm.
communication about what we need. Right.
Yeah, yeah. And to add to that, that like no matter how long I do it, every time there is something I'm about to bring up, something that feels a little bit of a stretch, it
Yeah.
feels like jumping in a cold plunge.
Yeah.
It's like there
Yeah.
is this like nervousness, a little discomfort and bite in my tongue and thinking like maybe not good time, kind of convincing myself.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
what I know to be true, that every time I power through that and I still do it, I might even say like, hey, I want to bring up something. I feel nervous, right? And then
Yeah.
my partner
Yeah.
already, he's holding the space. He's like extra curious. Now he's like very curious. Like, what is she
He's like,
nervous
what are you gonna
about?
bring up? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like
Yeah.
holding that tenderness together, right? And
Yeah.
every time I bring it up, I am so happy I brought it up. So happy every time.
Yeah.
Just like,
Yeah. This question just popped into my head. Do you ever have like situations where, what if your partner wanted something that was just like a no go for you? Because I think fear gets in the way of us being open and honest. Like, I think if my partner said, I want to
mm,
have a threesome or something, I would be like, there is no way. Like, it's just not something I would be like, no. Right. And so I think
mm.
that some people might be worried about opening up a can of worms of things that may not want to experience. How do you manage
Yeah,
that?
yeah. And that's beautiful. I love how deep you go, Giselle.
Oh.
It's just like I feel like I could talk with you for hours. It's just so
Boo!
good,
And if I saw
yummy
you
stuff.
physically, I'd give you a hug.
Yes. So that like those scenes that a lot of times we want something, like let's say I might have fantasies that I even don't want them to be true, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
there is juice in talking about this, right? And
Yeah,
so like let's say if I have fear, like maybe I'm thinking about threesome, like let's use your example,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
I'm afraid to scare my partner, right? And I don't know
Yeah,
like and just to talk like, you know what, it's not an invitation, it just came to me and I want to
yeah,
share with you.
yeah,
I want to share everything with you. Like I want to feel
yeah,
that extra closeness because it does create extra closeness, right? So this is
yeah,
my mind, where my mind went. And maybe I don't even want to do it, or maybe I do but we will
yeah,
never do it, but I just want
yeah,
to
yeah,
share it. And just sharing it, I like sometimes I share stuff and we just both get so turned on that it facilitates that like yummy experience for us, and we
yeah,
will never have it in real life. It just feels like
yeah.
too much,
Yeah,
right?
there's a level of honesty that needs to happen. Like there's a level of honesty and safe that you have to have in your relationship, right? For you to put stuff out there and not
I think
and not
like you.
worry that you're getting judged, right? Like I don't know,
Mhm.
what if you like S&M or whatever, right? Like and your partner's like,
Yeah.
oh no, right? Like you don't want to put something out there that you're like, oh, they're judging me from here on. So there has to be a level of safety. There has to be a level of comfort that you are able to put stuff out there that
Yeah,
you
and you
can
build
talk
it.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, like you start with smaller scenes. You like maybe like share something less edgy.
Yeah.
And as
Yeah.
well, like I always invite like whatever you feel, those fears, speak them. That like,
Yeah.
okay, honey, I want to
Yeah.
share this, but I'm afraid you will judge me.
Yeah.
And just like and putting that out there, it already it shapes them. They're like, oh my God, they see me as like that I can judge that. Like I wonder
Mm.
why, right? Like so it opens up like kind of learning
The
each other more.
conversation. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, go
Because
ahead.
you can spend long time, like you can spend years together and not know the depths of each other,
Yeah. And that
you
that
know?
is really interesting to me that you could be in the same household and then some people don't really know each other or they don't really spend time together and they don't really yeah, that there is like there's no closeness, but you're sharing
Hmm.
like a home, like you're sharing a like the time and space together in those moments. And it's amazing how, especially when you have resentment, like when you have built resentment over things and you don't, like you said, if you don't deal with the hedgehogs, you have to deal with the hedgehogs. Otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
like a new hedgehog come up in when you're bringing it up in conversation. This is one of the things I used to do. I remember that my husband pointed out to me was that if I had a hedgehog and there was a new one there, I would bring them both at the same time. Be like this one, and then this other hedgehog, and then this hedgehog, and then this. It's like, wait a minute, you didn't tell me about the other two hedgehogs. Like, why are you bringing up all three now, right? So I really had to look and
Yeah.
say, okay, you know what? Like, first of all, that's not fair. We have to manage each hedgehog individually as it happens, so that I'm not bringing three hedgehogs, four hedgehogs, five hedgehogs to the conversation. Right?
And kill him with hedgehogs.
Absolutely no hedgehogs. Exactly, exactly. Oh, it's craziness.
Yeah,
Craziness.
because when you share hedgehog, you want to see how they receive it,
Yeah.
right? That's why you want to do one at a time, because you share in it. It's good if he's like having empathy and he's holding you. He might get triggered, and now
Yeah.
you might want to step in and take care of him,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I know when we have this hedgehog conversation, when we did it right, at the end we feel like having a hug or a
Mhm.
kiss, or we just like we feel hot for each other, right? There is
Yeah.
that closeness happens.
Yeah.
If that doesn't
Yeah.
happen, if we're done with our conversation and we feel distance, something didn't get resolved,
Yeah.
something was
There's still
missing.
another little baby hedgehog that's still there. I
Yes,
agree with
yes.
that. I think I agree with that completely. Yeah. Yeah. As we are
Yeah.
coming up to the end of our episode, I have two more questions for you. I ask my guests all this question. What's your definition of unconditional love?
Mm, mm, mm. Oh. So for me, that when I can love person without attaching to them,
Mhm.
without like claiming them, that I'm like, you know what? I love you, like really love you, and I'm not attached to them loving me back. It's
Yeah.
they don't have to love me back.
Yeah.
And I'm not attached to
Mhm.
like having like, oh, you're mine and now I own you and you don't go anywhere. And so I love this analogy of like, I just heard about it, like they hold your hands, like for those who are listening, just like you, both of your like palms up and you hold your hands together. And imagine there is a
Mhm.
bird. So you hold them together because there is a baby bird and you don't want to drop it. So you hold this baby bird, but
Mhm.
then you don't close it like this, that like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm like, you're not going anywhere, right? So you still like you don't drop it, but you have your hands open, palms up, and like the bird, might fly away or might just sit there in this openness. And so this is the healthy attachment. That's how I see unconditional love.
I love that you said that because I think often we think that attachment is love, that possessiveness
Mm,
is love when it is not love. And I totally understand that. I have felt that for the people in my life. And I'm like, you know what? Be happy, even if it's not with me. I just want you to be the happiest version of yourself, like that you're living your dreams.
mhm.
And so when you truly love people and love them from that place, they don't even have to like they don't have to love you back. You can just love them just because
Yeah.
they're alive, just because of their beingness, just because you choose to love them. And I think that's really,
Hmm.
really key. So I just
Yeah.
want you to share where can people find you, what discounts are you gonna offer people, like what work are you do you want to share with our audience right now?
Yeah. I'm very excited for my program that I have for men. It's called Authentic Lover. And how it was inspired that I used to do pleasure retreats for women. And so many women would say, like, oh my God, I learned all of these things about myself. I know what I want in relationship, in bedroom. I don't feel like telling my partner. I just like how we
Mhm.
talked, right? That like it's so
Yeah.
important to share. And yet being a human, it's hard. And so many people don't do
Mm.
it, right? And they say, if only my partner could be a fly on the wall and like watch all of this and like learn all of this.
Yeah.
And so, and that's what like I am, you know what? Let me do that. And so
Yeah.
now I work with men and I'm being a female coach that I know from myself being a woman, right? As well, I worked with a lot of women. So in a very vulnerable way, I share in depth what women want,
I love that.
and that's just like that's so eye-opening for a lot of men. And we like I have pre-recorded videos, so it's a program where like they go their own pace, and there is like communication
Nice.
section, which is lubrication, then intimacy section, and then sex
Mm.
section. So we cover all of it. And then every week we have coaching calls where we talk and we practice. And oh my god, so we have links. Gissele has links, and I offer 10% discount for the first month of subscription. So for those of you
Nice.
who feel like joining, I would love to have you in the
Nice. That's
program.
wonderful. And those links are going to be available in the transcript as well as the links to your programs and your website. We usually have a transcript. Yeah, too. Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you,
Yeah.
Luba. I could talk to you literally all day.
Right? Oh my
So you're
god.
so much fun. And I think you were definitely, this is your destiny. This is your call. This is what you're meant to do. Because that the openness and authenticity that exudes from you is just amazing. And and it's, I think,
Oh.
such an important topic for men to be able to have the space to be able to practice that, especially like vulnerability and intimacy. I think it's such beautiful work. Thank you so much
Oh,
for joining
Gissele. Oh,
us.
I love your presence. I loved your questions. I love
Thank
how
you.
you feel
Thank
into
you.
it and you are with
Thank
me,
you. Oh
Yes,
yeah.
so much fun. I
Yeah.
can't wait to share with my people our
Yeah, for sure.
podcast.
I'm
So it's
excited.
exciting.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And thank you for joining us for another episode of the Love and Compassion Podcast with Gissele. See you soon.